tell him about what we said at the end of yesterday's show about if his manager listened to today's show?
Oh, yeah. Like,
Welcome to the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. Mark Messina, as always, is unprepared.
Well, where was the drum roll?
He's already left the couch.
God,
there it was.
It's unbelievable.
Usually we have the topics up on the board. Today you will see there's only one topic. We want to welcome Dylan Rockoff to the show.
What's happening, everybody?
Dylan,
thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for joining us. Dylan has some shows this weekend locally. But before we dive into that, we want to talk music. We want to talk about your journey. You're going to help us settle some debates we have on the show every day.
Happy to do so.
This is the most underwhelming part of the show. It's probably the reason our ratings aren't higher. I start the show
right away we kill our audience.
Yes, I start the show off the same way every day with the most important question. Mark, how are you feeling today?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm feeling good today. I'll tell you why. Okay. Because the combination of Dylan being here to talk music. Okay. Tomorrow, you don't know this, but Dylan will. First of all, Dylan is going to quickly learn. He's going to be very underwhelmed with your musical knowledge and your taste. Tomorrow, Def Leppard has a new album coming out.
Ooh, that's exciting.
To you, that doesn't mean anything.
It means nothing.
To a person my age, this is a big deal. A lot of people my age are thinking like, oh my gosh, they're still going. But like Dylan appreciates, because I've seen Dylan shows and they run the spectrum. They'll play Sabbath. They go way back and they go way forward.
Well, let's start there. I have a musical gap.
Okay.
My musical gap is 75 to 90.
Okay.
Like anything 75 to 90, like I just don't.
So like none of that 80s stuff, like Michael Jackson, like Prince. You don't listen to Prince or anything?
No, like
and your heart just breaks for him right now.
That's
see,
money.
Like, I know the hits.
Sure.
Like I know like everybody's top 3 or 4 because I'm not an animal. Like,
right.
I know, like I'm not a monster.
I'm not an animal.
Right.
As we go Elephant Man on us. Right?
Correct. But I will say anything after 90 and really like anything like Motown beforehand, and even like older country. Like, I'm there. But anything, there's just that like 15, 20-year gap where I'm just kind of like,
interesting.
Yeah, I just don't have
I haven't figured out. There must be a girl in this. Like her dad was like a DJ and he was in love with her and she told him to pound sand and now you just blacked out that whole generation. That's what I think.
Before we start, Gianna did say you look a little bit like the guy from Blue's Clues today.
Oh yeah, Steve.
Oh, nice.
I got this at a thrift shop in Portland. Like I really liked it, but then after I bought it, I put it on and I'm like, oh man, I look like Steve from Blue's Clues.
How long ago were you in Portland?
I was in Portland. It was at the end of the Maisie Peters tour, which was like May 24th, I think is when we were there.
Recently.
Yeah, and I saw Ramiz when I was there because Ramiz is out there now.
Okay, real quick, Portland.
Yeah.
Is it as a mess as they make it out to be?
So I don't, my experience, the part of town that I was in was not as rough or, whatever as like it's painted to be in a lot of places. Unruly as like a lot of the other places might be. But, Ramiz had said, there are definitely parts of town where it's tough. I mean, I did see like lots of like tent cities and I would imagine that a lot of those people were probably using drugs because I know that there's like a no law against drugs there. But yeah, I mean, the part of town that I was in, like near Burnside Street, was actually really nice. Yeah. But I didn't really venture out much further than that, so I didn't.
But you were probably there for like 2 days.
I was there for like 12 hours. We rolled up in the morning. I had the day to kind of explore. We had sound check. We played, and then we were out. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Then.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to just, I guess, for anybody who may not know you, 30, 60 seconds.
Sure.
Kind of why we invited you on the show and what you got going on.
He's a rock star.
30,
I covered that. Didn't I cover
30, 60 seconds is a little tough for me because I'm very long-winded. But my name's Dylan Rockoff. I graduated from Loyalsock Township High School in 2013.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that?
I repped it today.
You know what's funny?
I wore it specifically for today.
I pulled a shirt out. I pulled the Susquehanna shirt out, which is maroon. And then it hit me. I was like, wait, Rockoff's on. Jeff's going to be there. I can't wear maroon because it'll look like I just. So anyway, go ahead.
Yes, Loyalsock Township, 2013. I'm a musician. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been playing in bands around Williamsport since I was, 14, 15 years old. I was an acoustic duo called Dylan and Maverick with my buddy Maverick. I'm in a band called Clyde Frog that still plays. We actually have some shows this weekend that we'll talk about. I have my own solo artist project under my name, Dylan Rockoff, that this year I'm releasing a song every month. I was just on tour with an artist named Maisie Peters and Jonah Kagan. So, I'm a musician and I'm from Williamsport, and I'm happy to be back. I love coming home to play shows and hanging out and talking to you guys and just telling you guys about my journey.
If you're from here and you haven't seen Clyde Frog, I mean, you've had to hear of Clyde Frog. If you haven't seen Clyde Frog, then you've kind of been under a rock because you guys have been doing it for how many years?
I mean, I joined when I was, I think, 15 years
I was
old.
going
I
to
think
say
that was like
16.
2010, 2009. I think was our first year of playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it carry on from Uptown, or is it something that?
So the band actually existed before I joined.
Okay.
It was Tori, Chris, and then there were a bunch of interchangeable members that had kind of come and gone. I think they started in like 2006.
Okay.
But they had a whole summer of shows booked, and two of the guys that were in the band actually quit. And so they had all these shows, and they didn't have a whole band together to do it. So I was young at the time, and I think, I don't know exactly how it happened. I think Tori might have asked around for people who could be good at filling the spot, and I was one of the recommendations that was made. Garrett Catano was also one of the recommendations that was made. And we showed up to Chris's garage one day in the summer, like it was May, right before the summer started, and we all played together. We're like, okay, this is it. This is a lot of fun. Because I grew up on like all that classic rock stuff that they were playing, and like we all had the same taste in music.
Yeah.
Although
he grew up on boy bands.
Pre-75
so it's
though.
almost the same.
Yeah.
You grew up on Zeppelin. He grew up on like,
Backstreet Boys and
I
NSYNC
think
and
you're
90 Degrees.
really downplaying my ability to cover a lot of genres. I grew up on polkas.
Okay. Pennsylvania polka.
Roll out the barrel.
Sure.
Shut up and drink your beer.
Right.
You know, the classic polka songs. Also, but country, Temptations, a ton of Motown. So I'm like all over the place.
Totally.
I just have this gap.
You
had mentioned Clyde Frog.
Yeah.
You guys, I love the covers that you do.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you said you just went on a tour
Yep.
where you were kind of playing somebody else's music.
Yep.
The difference between playing a cover or somebody else's music versus playing your own.
Sure.
Do you have a preference? Which one?
Yeah, I mean, I always prefer to play my music and the stuff that I write because I feel very connected to it and something that kind of started and ended with me. So obviously I feel much more personally connected, and like that emotion, whatever the song is about, is something that I actually experienced. So when I'm actually singing it, it's easier to emote it and actually feel where it came from. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say like there are covers and like other people's music that don't get inside of me like in the same way and don't like affect me in the same way. But the thing about like playing somebody else's music as opposed to playing a cover is like when you're playing a cover, you're not playing with the person who created the song. So there's two trains of thought. You can do like a note for note cover where you're playing it exactly the same way that they played it on the record, or you can do your own interpretation of it and do your own thing with it, which is cool. I kind of am more partial to doing your own thing with it. But I understand that like for a lot of audiences, they want to hear it exactly the way that it was recorded, and that's cool too. But when you're playing somebody else's music, like for example with Jonah, he had never played any shows live before. He just like kind of exploded on TikTok, and that's how he got his start. He's super talented. His songs are awesome, but he never performed them in a live environment before. So he kind of left it up to me and Mike, the other guy that I was playing with, to put our own flavor onto it and kind of help him out with arranging it and everything like that. And I really enjoy that because I think when it comes to music, I love writing and I love performing, but more than anything, I love to arrange and produce. I'm trying to get better at production. So that's what I really, really dig.
You probably never heard this story. And I was going to say, we're going to explode on TikTok soon too.
I'm waiting.
I feel it. I see it happening.
Any day.
I'm waiting.
When when Eddie Van Halen played on Beat It.
Yep.
And he's uncredited on Beat It, but he did the guitar. And apparently, like they asked him to come in, and he went in and played it, and then when Michael Jackson then showed up, like he's like, I rearranged it for you. And Michael Jackson was like, what? He goes, I just think it sounds better this way. And they played it. Michael Jackson was like, it does that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you're still uncredited.
Totally.
But he, so yes, it is one of the, I saw a thing about Def Leppard, as I mentioned, Def Leppard, when they wrote the Hysteria album, that it took them a year to perfect Animal.
Yep.
And so it's the whole process for a person who's not a musician, when you have multiple people involved and multiple brains trying to figure this out. Just the writing, the arrangement, how many different versions songs must have had in like before what we hear on the radio.
Yeah.
So I have no question there. I was just, when you said arrangement, that
he just likes to talk.
That just made me think out
that's
loud.
A great point because it's definitely the case. Like, a lot of times there'll be multiple iterations of songs before the one that ultimately ends up being the final product, actually comes to be. And that's like the most exciting part to me, is like reimagining stuff and finding the exact right thing.
Okay, so here's my first dumb question so when you're dealing with Clyde Frog, and you're a kind of a unique band, maybe not because you have multiple lead singers.
Yep.
You have male voices, female voices, all these things. So I'm guessing members come and say, "Hey, I want to do this song."
Yeah.
Do the other band members have veto power where you're like, "I hate that"?
So funny that you say
if
that.
you pick that song, I quit.
It's so funny that you say that because for this weekend of shows, like we're always trying to add new stuff to the set list every time we come back and play. And it's so funny because, I'll suggest something, and because all of our different tastes in music are so different.
Right.
So like, I like to do pop stuff because a lot of the stuff that I write, like when I got to college, I kind of really got into pop music, and like ever since then, I've been trying to incorporate like some more pop songs into what Clyde Frog does, but still do them in like a rock, kind of way. And so like I wanted to do like a Drake song for this weekend, and like I won't say name names, but a couple of people were like, no, like that's stupid, let's not do that. And then we also recommended like The Boys of Summer by Don Henley. I love that song.
I just heard it yesterday.
Yeah. And I think we're all on board about that, but there was like some conversation about whether we should take things, because there's like Antares is like a band that covers it. It's like a pop punk version of it. And our drummer really likes that version. So we were talking about maybe taking elements from that. And my bass player was like, no, that's stupid. Let's not do that. So there's definitely like a lot of conversation, a lot of compromise that needs to be made about what we decide we want to do with it. Ultimately, it ends up to just like everybody learning the chords and like how the song goes. And then we all come together and do our own thing with it, because we've been playing together for so long that like, as long as we all know the bones and the skeleton of the song, we can do our own thing with it. And like, regardless of somebody's opinion, like you can get over like clouded by like the way the original version is and be like, okay, this is not something we would play, but okay, great, because this isn't something we would do. So how do we take this and do our own thing with it and make it something totally new, So that's the convincing that I have to do with a lot of the members of the band a lot of time. And honestly, that needs to be done with me too, because there are songs that I'm like, that's stupid.
I was just going to ask you that when you're writing or creating your own stuff. I think I've told you this story before. One of my favorite stories that Rolling Stone ever wrote, Fall Out Boy, Patrick Stump and Vince actually got in a fist fight over one word in the song. Not like actually production or like the chorus or one word.
Whether Mary's dress waves or sways? Was that the word? Waves or sways?
So. That's Springsteen.
He doesn't get that. you get that joke.
Story.
Oh, you listened to it?
You told me the story.
Well, you don't listen to most of the things
you told me the story. Most people think it's one thing, and it's
for
the
47
other.
years or whatever, it was wrong.
Right.
And now it's right.
Is it sway? It sways,
it
right?
Is sways.
Yeah.
It sways. But for 47 years it waved. I can't believe you remembered that.
You told me
because you hate Springsteen.
I know, but I listened to you for some reason.
No,
I don't hate Springsteen.
Yes, he does.
I just don't get it. Like, I just don't get it.
We got to sit down, man. We got some listening to do.
He needs an intervention. When we're done here, please help him.
We're going to have an intervention for Jeff, guys. Don't worry. We're going to get him into Springsteen.
We can make that work.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you that because I think part of their success was probably the fact that they cared that much.
Absolutely.
So when you're writing and creating your own stuff, do you find yourself having those battles with yourself, with other people?
Yeah. I think for me, maybe not so much as like any other ordinary musician. I think that I don't want to say I'm unique in this aspect, and maybe I could be a little bit better about being a little bit more detail oriented, but I try really hard, and I don't even really have to try. I just think my brain is programmed in a way where like I'm more concerned about the big picture, because I think like the average listener isn't going to care. Like I understand as a creative, like that the details do matter. And like, there are moments where I'm like, okay, I really want to get this word right because it's important and it can make, but the question is, will it make or break the song? Like, I don't necessarily know. I think I'm of the like mindset that one word or a phrase is not going to make or break it. It's all about, a lot of times, the chorus. Like that's the thing that people remember, and that's the thing that people want to sing along to. So they're really going to care what the words are there. But yeah, my mindset has always been like, what's the overall picture and how's the average listener going to hear this and interpret this, rather than like,
well, so that's
and the listener doesn't care if the dress waves or sways.
They don't. That's interesting because you said you're going to do a song a month.
Yeah.
So the difference between dropping an album, here it is, digesting it all at once, versus doing a song once a month.
Yeah.
Is that more of a social media trend? Is that more where the industry's heading? Is that more, because that is like a broader decision that you've made?
For sure. So definitely, I think social media has kind of rolled into it because it gives you more reason to have things to talk about and promote, and not be promoting the same thing over and over again. But it's also just from a DSP, digital streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music. They like the consistency, and they like when you're continually feeding the algorithm with songs and with content. So it's more about that and keeping the DSPs happy and keeping me, kind of in the front of the algorithm. Because I could, spend a year, write 12 songs and put them all out at once, but the algorithm doesn't really like that as much. And it also might just get lost in the mix. And some of those songs won't have a life of their own, because when you give the listener the opportunity to listen to one song, that's all they get for, a month. They're going to be like, okay, I'm ready for another one by the time, that 3 weeks is over. And then you hit them with another one. And then they listen to that for 3 weeks.
See, this is stuff we've talked about this before. And this is stuff that I'm fascinated by. I think you are too, is just how much just technology and these platforms
changed
are changing
so much.
the way you're making Like we're hearing music we never would have heard because the way you were being forced to make it, it's almost like, hey, you don't have a year to put out an album.
Absolutely.
Like, you need something now. So I find that whole thing fascinating.
And but he recorded all these in like 2 weeks, just like they always did. And then he lays on the beach for 11 months. And he he just calls someone and says, hey, today's the day you put it out.
Let's drop it.
Feet propped up and he's riding surfboards.
Do you have eureka moments, or do you find like a lot of these things take weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a really harsh critic on myself. So like I write 2-3 times a week, and a lot of times it'll take like after 2 weeks, I'll have one song that I actually really like.
Okay.
I'm tough on myself.
That's
so like,
good though.
I mean, you know, when you think about it in terms, I grew up playing baseball. So, you know, when you think about it in terms of like batting average, if you can, sports analogies, I know we're all into that.
The world.
But no, seriously, that's the way I think about it. Like, you know, if you can be successful more than 20% of the time, then you're doing all right. Like you're doing fine. You know, it's when you start thinking like, if I'm writing though, like in a month and I'm like, I'm not getting anything that I like, that's when I'm in a slump, and that's when I need to take a step back and take a break and just live my life for a little bit before I get back into writing.
So well, you talked before we got on. I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
you just went on tour with somebody and a chick named Macy. I don't remember the name.
Maisie Peters,
Who was the dude?
Jonah Kagan.
You played for Jonah.
I played with Jonah, yeah.
So you were just like lead guitarist.
Yep.
How cool was that? Or I mean, it was obviously different because you do so much singing and now you're backup singer guitarist.
No, I mean, you know, overall, it was an incredible experience. Playing with Jonah was awesome. His music is really, really great. I think it's actually really akin to a lot of the stuff that I do. So I really enjoyed playing all of that for that reason. As I mentioned to you guys, there were definitely moments because I am an artist and, you know, I love being on those stages playing my songs. So there were definitely moments I found myself being like, you know, not necessarily I wish that I was in his position, but like I'm hungry to do this myself, you know, soon. I'm like really, really hungry for it because I don't want to say, I guess envious is a little bit of kind of the emotion, you know, because he's, you know, he's getting to play because every show is sold out and like Maisie's fans are so rabid and so welcoming and so warm that they took to him really, really well. And they took to me well too. Like, you know, I was on stage and like, they would come after me. They would all wait by the bus after the show for Maisie. And they would come up to me and they would have nice things to say. I want to take pictures of me and stuff like that. But I knew at the end of the day, you know, unless I was like, hey, I'm Dylan Rockoff, you know, let's check out my artist stuff. They weren't going to know that I'm an artist, but I was pretty vocal about that, you know, for people who actually cared. And actually a lot of fans, like if you're on my Instagram and see some of my last posts, a lot of people that comment are people that I met on the Maisie tour who are like, now there's somebody started a Dylan Rockoff fan page on Instagram from the Maisie tour and like has been posting a whole bunch of stuff since then. So it was really, really beneficial to me in a lot of ways. But yeah, like I said, what I told you guys before the show, like I said, 90% of the time I was totally happy being the side guy and just playing guitar because at the Collective too, growing up, having played the Collective, that was kind of my role a lot of the time. And I'm happy that I had that experience growing up. So I knew how to handle that because I did have to dial back, you know, how forward I was and how much I talked.
It's not all about me.
It's not all about me. And I think that that's healthy as a musician too. Like, you know, it's great to be an artist.
As a person.
It's healthy as a person.
There's a lot of people who need to grasp. It's not all
absolutely
about
healthy as a person and having like a sense of social and situational awareness where you're like, hey, maybe I don't need to say this right here. Maybe I should let him say this. Maybe I should let him have his moment. I should be quiet. Like, I think that's healthy as a human being. That's a great way to put it. So yeah, it was an awesome experience, but it was definitely different for me because I've never done touring when it's not as Dylan Rockoff.
Pretend your parents aren't listening. Tell us about groupies.
I think
do you have a girlfriend?
I do have a girlfriend. Yeah.
So there you go.
So she's the only
forget your parents. Pretend your girlfriend's not listening.
So my girlfriend, I can't pretend my girlfriend's not listening because inevitably it will get back to her. But
she's sitting outside.
In all seriousness, first of all, Alex is wonderful. I would say
Doesn't he sound like me right now?
I would say
once a show I'm like, my girlfriend is amazing, and then I tell the story. Yeah.
She's the only. I won't even use the word groupie. She's the only female, whatever. Because I care about a lot of female opinions. But to answer your question seriously, I have never like, and I mean it when I say this, I never got into music with the intention of like, you know, attracting female attention.
Liar!
I did it because I love playing and I love the way that it made me feel. And the fact that like, I think that the reason that like females, but also just like human beings in general are attracted to it is because they want to live vicariously through this person, you know, be like, man, it would be really cool for me to be in that. And also I think like the music that we write really impacts them and is something to relate to. But to speak specifically to the Maisie tour, yeah, like there were like, I mean, there was her audience is predominantly female. So the people who were talking to me and coming up to me and Jonah, whoever after the show were all girls.
Sure.
But it's Very respectful.
His answer's getting better all of a sudden. For the first 2 minutes, that was the most disappointing answer I've ever heard. Now it's getting better.
No, but like everybody's very respectful. I never got the sense that anybody, at least for me, because I'm also pretty open about being in a relationship. Like when I meet these people, I'm very quick to talk about my girlfriend. Sure. But if I didn't though, like I'm sure that there would be girls who would be interested in, you know, going out or whatever.
That lifestyle has to have shifted from 2020 to like 19.
I mean, 1984
from the 1980s,
Sunset Strip.
Right. You could get away with so much, and you know, I think if you put the stuff that used to happen back then in the frame of 2020, that stuff would never fly. Yeah. And, you know, obviously, like, for me, it's, again, like, it's not about, like, having romantic or, like, you know, physical relationships with your fans. It's about the emotional one and, like, you know, more of a friendly, like, mentor thing as opposed to, you know, somebody to lust after.
All right. Go ahead.
I just have one more question about creative. Because I was telling him, I fell into this article and I really, like, deep dove into it. Spotify, they reward songs that are under 3 minutes essentially, because you have to get so far to get a total listen.
Sure.
Am I saying this correctly?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think also the consumer, because of TikTok, because of the way that people are like discovering music now, the stuff that's blowing up on TikTok and going viral is the stuff that's 7-10 seconds long and no longer.
So do you find yourself making shorter choruses, shorter songs, shorter everything?
I probably should more than I do.
Okay.
You know, I have always tried to stay away from trends and tried to just do my own thing, but
it'll come back around.
The fact that it will come back
just
around.
Like
I
vinyl.
agree. Sure. And I think the fact of the matter is that's what the market wants right now is the short and sweet and the stuff that's really easy digestible. And because otherwise you're going to lose their attention really quickly. So yeah, I think having shorter choruses and having shorter overall songs, like one of the big songs I had a writer I used to write with who started writing with this other artist. His name's Justice Bennett, and he released a song, I think it's called Bad Day, that's under a minute long. It's like 1:50. Okay. And that's it. And it, you know, went viral. It streamed probably, I think it's probably got like 100 million streams at this point. Yeah. And that's because, you know, people want more and they just stream it over and over again. Like, or they stream it one extra time as opposed to only streaming it once and being like, all right, I'm done with this. Like, I get it.
The article deep dove into Old Town Road.
Yep.
And part of its success is obviously it's a catchy song, but part of its success, it's like 2 minutes and 17 seconds, I think was the original track on Spotify.
Yep. So
it was that idea, like people were actually listening to the full track.
Yeah.
And then the algorithm recognized like, oh, people are listening to the entirety of the song.
Sure, exactly.
And then somebody went through and did a study on the Today Top Hits on Spotify. I think it was like over half of the songs for the first time ever were less than 3 minutes long.
Yep. That does not surprise me at all.
And it was just kind of how, and I think it was Katy Perry came out and said like, yeah, I made my song shorter for the first time ever.
Yeah.
It's like my management team was telling me like my songs need to be shorter.
100%.
So I
Billy
find that
Joel said it. I need to cut it down to 3:05. Billy Joel, that's your era, right? 70s. I Am the Entertainer.
Billy Joel rules.
There you go. Oh, that's one of them.
I like Billy Joel.
He's the greatest.
All right, so you went to BC or BU?
I went to Northeastern University.
Northeastern, one of the other Bean Pod colleges.
Exactly.
So tell a story about you. You opened for Bon Jovi, right?
Yeah.
And so how did that take? I know there was a contest. You won a contest, and you got to open in the Garden.
Totally.
So tell that story.
Yeah. So it was my third year at Northeastern, and I had just started like the Dylan Rockoff project. I think in 2015 was when I released my first song. It was Feeling Fine, which Gary Crispin and the radio around here was really good about playing and all that stuff. So yeah, I released that song in 2015, and that was like the first time that I really started working with my manager. And so we were like, okay, this is really cool. Let's keep, recording music and releasing music and playing shows around Boston. And so it was 2017. My mom actually, she's the biggest Bon Jovi fan in the world. And she saw that he was having open submissions for people to open for him on this, I think the House Is Not For Sale tour. And I was like, all right, there's no way, but like to humor my mom, I'll do it. I'll submit, whatever. I had just played an album release show for my album, 115 Gainsborough, like I think a month before that. And we had a video of the show. And so we sent that in. That was like, part of the submission was to send a video of you playing a live show. And then kind of uploaded it. My manager helped me out, forgot about it. And then I think a lot of people around here were really good about sharing. Like obviously all my friends at school were like very on top of it and shared it and liked it. And I think what they ended up doing is they ended up taking the ones that were in the top 10 as far as like likes and shares. And then those are the ones that actually got reviewed by Bon Jovi and his team or whatever, or Live Nation. And I got a call. I was sitting at work because at Northeastern, we have the co-op program. So I was on my second co-op working a full-time job. And I got a call around lunch from my manager. Well, my mom called me first. And I didn't answer because I'm a bad son. I think she did. I'm not sure, but I do remember I got a call from my no.
I'm gonna show this to my mom because every time she calls, I answer.
That's a lie. Will called me first, and I didn't answer. I'm like, hey man, I'm at work. Like, what's good? Can we just text about it? He's like, Will's my manager.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, man, I'm at work. Like, I can't really talk right now. He's like, well, can you step out for a second? This is really important. And I stepped out. Like, we had like a room like outside the office, and I was like, hey dude, what's up? He's like, yo, do you want to play at the Garden? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, that Live Nation contest for Bon Jovi, like you won, like you're gonna open for Bon Jovi at the Garden. And I'm like, no, I do that. Stop joking with me right now. Like,
yeah, let me check. What?
Yeah.
I'll see if I'm free.
And so then, we had the whole like, oh man, thank you so much. Like, this is gonna be awesome. Like, this is gonna be life changing. All this stuff, and hung up the phone. And the next call that I made was to my mom, and my mom was like, oh my god, dude, I can't believe it. She was with her friends like in Florida, and she was like literally sobbing, like couldn't breathe. And I'm like, Mom, I'm super excited. Thank you, but take a deep breath. let's do it. And so it was a full circle moment for me because, like I said, my mom is a huge Bon Jovi fan.
She should be.
Yeah, and I'm a huge Bon Jovi fan too. He's the best.
He's pretty good.
And yeah, so like I spent that whole, I think, so actually it's interesting. I got the call I think in February, and then the show was supposed to be April 8th, but then Bon Jovi got laryngitis. Okay. So thank God they were able to reschedule the show. They literally just pushed it to the next week. And it was April 15th, I think is when it ended up being, which was like Easter weekend. But anyway, I spent the whole month rehearsing the heck out of like the set with my band. And then we got a van, we drove up to New York and spent the night there. And then we drove to the Garden at like 11 in the morning, and they brought us in like the back of the Garden, and like we couldn't load anything in because they're all union workers. So technically we're not allowed to touch anything. So we loaded everything in, and we got to just hang out in the Garden all day and watch like Bon Jovi and his whole crew like build their stage and build their set. We got to sound check in an empty Madison Square Garden, which is the most wild thing. Because I mean, playing the show is really, really cool. Obviously, like that's amazing. But hearing the songs that I wrote and the music that I created fill a space like that is like, man, I'm never gonna forget that. Like, that gave me chills. And obviously the show did too. But like, it's a different thing when you're experiencing it just with the band and like in the sonic environment where there's nobody else there to experience it. It's like kind of like your own thing. But yeah, we sound checked. We got to meet John before he went on. He was really, really, really nice. Was actually thanking us for being there. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Thank you. Like, and so then we played, and yeah, it was an incredible time. Like there was like a whole group of people who came up from Williamsport to see the show. They were all like in the front row. So everybody was screaming our words back to me, going crazy. And I got Madison Square Garden singing some of the words back to one of my songs, "Awake or Asleep." And yeah, and then we played. It was awesome. I met a bunch of people after, sold a bunch of merch, met some people and stuff like that. And then it's funny because I was wearing a hoodie when I got there, and we all got backstage passes that were like stickers that we put on. And before I went on stage, I took the hoodie off and I put it down like on the sound booth because I didn't want to go out with my hoodie on and look like a nerd. But I ended up changing my style, and I wear hoodies now when I play. But anyway, I took it off and I left it there. And then when I went to go out to the merch area, I didn't put my hoodie on and had my sticker on it. So when I came back to try to get back into the backstage area, one of the security guards was like, hey, where's your backstage pass? I'm like, oh, it's on my hoodie. It's over there at the sound booth. Can you let me go get it? He's like, yeah, go get it. And when I went back, it wasn't there. So I went and talked to the security guard. I'm like, hey man, like, I don't know where my hoodie is, but like, I just played up there. Like, and he's like, man, I'm sorry you don't have a backstage pass. I gotta escort you out. And I'm like, you're kidding. And he's like, no, like, you don't have a backstage pass. You got to go. So I got kicked out of Madison Square Garden on the same night that I played.
Did you really?
They threw me out. And then my manager.
Wait, at what time is this in the middle of John's set?
This is in the middle of the show. So my manager went and got my hoodie. He found it and then he brought it back to me and they let me back in. I got kicked out on the same night that I played.
So did you? All right. So I had multiple questions there. So because John's from New Jersey, and so I'm assuming this is not a late arriving crowd. I'm guessing it was pretty packed when you were playing.
It was at least half full. Madison Square Garden holds what, like 20,000, 25,000 people. So there was probably like 12,500 people there when I was playing.
So did you get to go on stage and play with them at all? Or
No, that didn't happen. It was just my band. And yeah, we played, I think,
because I saw them in DC once, and the band because I guess a lot of big bands use local acts from regionally around the country. So a band that he had open for him was a Baltimore band that played bars, and he let the kid come out and sing the first chorus or the first verse of Dead or Alive.
That's awesome.
And it was it used to be the Cap Center, or it was MCI, I guess, in DC.
Yeah.
And that was cool because he just they didn't even do a duet.
Yeah.
He just stepped back and he's like, no, you sing it. And he came out. That was cool.
Yeah. I get the sense. I mean, I only got to talk to him for a little bit, but I definitely get the sense that he loves giving back. And like, he knows where he came from. They started as a bar band too in Jersey. And I think that him doing things like that, like the opportunity that I got, was definitely out of him wanting to give back and give an opportunity to somebody in the same way that the opportunity was given to him. I think that like he's an admirable person in that respect. And I love his music, grew up on it. And, I always
who didn't grow up on it?
Man, you got to get into some Bon Jovi.
Let's have some.
Well, we were
gotta
talking
have a
about his
listening
voice.
session.
We were talking about his voice issues the other day.
Yeah.
You've heard those, but and that we were telling like I think it was during the pandemic or something. He spent like they said 4 or 5 days a week in his soup kitchen, like because he opened that soup kitchen, Soul to Soul, and he just like scrubbed pots and pans, just like every other $100 million.
Very, very normal, down to earth. I think he's like one of those people where like, fame changes you, and like all of that like notoriety and everything like that can totally get your ego and make you think that you're holier than thou. But I don't get that from him at all. I mean, based on those things.
You know what keeps him normal? Parenthood. Because your kids are just like, Dad, you're annoying. No matter how much money you have, your kids just kind of.
That's true. They just see you as dad.
Yeah,
very much.
No,
very much.
Definitely, very much so.
A little bit of fun influences, because this will get us into just a conversation about music.
Totally.
Just top influences, people you listen to.
Man, so it is tough for me because my influences and the stuff I listen to is all over the place. But like I said, we were talking before, like I grew up on Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Motown. All the stuff I was playing at the Collective when I went to the Collective. Played a lot of jazz growing up. This is all stuff that I wouldn't say necessarily directly comes through in the music that I write for Dylan Rockoff. But I think because of it just like is more subconscious than anything. But yeah, all that stuff, like the classic rock stuff, Motown. I got into indie rock really, really big when I was at the end of high school. So like Radiohead and like Grizzly Bear and the Local Natives and stuff like that. It wasn't until I got to college that I really got into the pop stuff. So like John Mayer is a huge influence on me. And like the music I release is Dylan Rockoff, Jason Mraz, Ed Sheeran, Shawn Mendes, that kind of stuff. Recently, Harry Styles, man. I love Harry Styles. Dude, he is amazing.
So here's what's funny. Please explain, because I listen to a ton of music.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Okay.
Like I struggle. No, I don't. I like the Harry Styles stuff. I don't know if it's because it's just so far away from the pop that I'm used to listening to.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't. Even this newest album that just came out a week or two ago, like I listened to it one time through and I struggle going back to it.
Yeah.
So what am I missing?
So I don't think it's for everybody, just because I like it and it's popular doesn't mean that it's, for everybody. But what I will say about Harry Styles with the last album and this one, because I do like this one, I think I'm more partial to the one before, Fine Line, but I do really love a lot of the songs on here, is that he is not trying to make pop music. I don't think. I think he's just writing what he wants to write. And, if you like it, good. If you don't, then it's not for you. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. And I think that I like it because he's not trying too hard, and I can tell that he's being authentic to what his influences and tastes are. Yeah. So like that last album, Fine Line, I could hear a lot. He definitely leaned more into the pop thing, but I'm into his first album too, where it was like very much influenced by like the Beatles and like the Rolling Stones. Like there are definitely moments where like Sweet Creature is way more of like a folk song and more, it's like pretty much like, it's kind of the same as Blackbird by the Beatles, but with a different melody. And I love the Beatles. I grew up on all that stuff. So I hear those influences in what he does, but he also like a Fine Line, which I really love. He took a lot of those influences and did them in a pop, kind of tried to make them more pop and introduce like some more electronic elements. And I also just like as a fan of production and a fan of like how music is created, really, really love the way his stuff is produced. It's produced in such a unique, original way that I personally would love my stuff to be produced in that way. It's all live drums too, which like in pop music these days is really rare, and a lot of live instruments too. Like there's, some samples here and there, but for the most part, his stuff's all live. And there's not a lot of pop music right now that does that. Another influence of mine that I really love that kind of does the same thing is Phoebe Bridgers. Yeah. I love Phoebe Bridgers, the way that she writes, and she's also all organic instrumentation.
Don't pretend you know who Phoebe Bridgers is.
Maggie Rogers. You guys know who Maggie Rogers is? She's amazing.
Phoebe,
she's great.
I was with you with the Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd,
right.
We'll
Rolling Stones.
This is all.
I was right there.
Sure. Clyde Frog is like more like that kind of stuff.
It's funny to me because like you had mentioned Mendes.
Yeah.
And I actually like Mendes started off and it was kind of like more teen pop.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like he came through, and even the last one was like, it was almost like orchestral.
Yeah.
Like there was just bigger ballad production. And so like even that I kind of was listening, I was like, I see the growth, like I see where it's going. I struggle with some of the style stuff. And so it was interesting to hear somebody else's how you're clearly hearing the things that I am not hearing.
Totally. Well, I also love, I mean, obviously the music is the most important thing to me, but I do love what he's doing, like his whole aesthetic. Like he's really trying to bring back the modern rock star. Like I love him too. He's bringing back the modern rock star thing, like the way that he dresses, the way he performs, the way he does his shows. And like I think his band now is all women. And so like I love the fact that like he's, you know, celebrating and trying to empower women. Like I think that that's great.
Just think how much drama there must be backstage though. You guys aren't gonna touch that.
Just as much.
Hey,
just as much as there is right here.
Yeah, that is so sweet. You know, it's funny. This is a good time to bring this up because like we ended the show yesterday, and yesterday was obviously in the news. There was the Texas shooting.
Yeah.
We talked about the Donaldson.
Josh Donaldson.
We talked about the Donaldson suspension, which is a hot button topic. Everything else. And when I made the joke, I said, hopefully Dylan's manager did not listen to the show today because he's gonna listen to the show, and we talked about like Second Amendment rights.
Talk about
racism, and he's gonna be like, "Do not let Dylan come on the show. Like, do not let him show."
I have opinions. We can talk about all that stuff offline.
Yeah. Here are my stupid questions to a rock star. Are there songs that you like used to love that you just played so much you're like, I really if I ever play this song again, it wouldn't break my heart?
Oh, that's a great question.
And the reason I say, because when I'm reading about Def Leppard and this new album coming out, I'll be like, oh my God. They've been playing Photograph for 43 years. Yeah. And when they see it on the set list and it's the encore, and it's like, is there any ounce of them that's like, I've played this song 10,000 times, but I guess the counterbalance from the audience with 15,000 people singing it back to you has to kind of liven that up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question because like there are definitely songs of mine that I love and always will have a special place for, but you know, I wrote them so long ago and I feel like I've created such good and different music since that point that like going back to them is like, I don't really feel the same way as I did when I wrote this song, you know, so I can totally relate to that. But at the same time, you know, you kind of have to like check yourself and check your ego and be like, okay, like at a certain point, like I think the Beatles were the ones who said like, we wrote all these songs and they were originally for us, but they're not ours anymore. They're all of yours, you know? So I think once somebody is able to connect with something and it becomes a part of their life and a part of their being, like you have to remember that like it made such an impact on somebody else that just because you don't feel the same way about it anymore doesn't mean that you have any right to like put anything less than your full into it, because you want to give that person who is so connected to the song the full experience. And whether you feel it or not, I mean, I think you kind of have to fake it till you make it to a point. But I definitely feel that way. I mean, deep down, like I'm like, I don't want to play this song right now, but I know that I have to because a lot of people are really going to appreciate that I do. And that's more from like the music that I create and the music that I write and perform. From a cover standpoint, there's a lot of songs that I play with Clyde Frog that I'm like, we're just doing this because people love it, and I'd have no interest in playing this song right now.
Yeah,
you know.
All right, next one. Are there any give us a band or a singer that you love that just isn't huge, that you don't understand why they're not huge because you think that we should be listening to that we're not listening to?
Rustin Kelly. Rustin Kelly. Yeah, okay. He's he's big. He's big in Nashville. Okay. He was married to Casey Musgraves. You guys know who Casey Musgraves is, who also is one of my favorites. Golden Hour is one of my favorite albums ever. He was married to Casey Musgraves. They got divorced recently, but I think he moved down to Nashville when he was probably like my age, like 23, 24. He got into some drugs and like was an addict for a little while, and he sings about all that stuff in his music. And he released an album in 2020 that's called Search and Destroy. And it for the last 2 years, and especially when I come to Williamsport, it's weird because when I leave Nashville, I feel like I want to have a piece of still being connected to Nashville. So like I always find myself listening to that album when I come here. That is an incredible album, top to bottom. There's specifically a song on there called Brave that has become like one of my like mantras in life. Well, we can listen to it out off the air, but he's one of the people who I think is not that big, who I really, really love. There's some other people in Nashville who I think are really, really great. There's an artist named Kathleen Regan who I actually just wrote with the other day. I think her music's awesome. She's wonderful. She's really, really great. It's not that big yet. Man, that's a good question. I could come up with a list of a bunch of people.
Has the way you found new music changed? Because like to me, finding new music, like I go online, I go on Spotify, I see what other people. But like you're meeting some of these people. Do you still find yourself digging for music, or do you just kind of fall into?
I actually could dig for music a lot more than I do, because I I could be better.
Hey, just send it to him. He's
That's
big
what I'm
time.
asking. That's
He's
what I'm-
big
well,
time. It just shows up in his inbox.
It's just, I think it's funny because like when you're growing, like I think we're close enough in age that we grew up in an era where like digging for music was real.
Yeah.
Like you were trying to find like the new thing and the next thing. It wasn't just always necessarily like given to you.
Yeah, you had to go out and you had to look for
find
it.
it.
My
It was a real
generation-
skill to find music.
We waited for the world premiere video on MTV. That's
Yeah.
what we did.
I
That's
feel
how
like your generation though was kind of like told like here's the music, and I feel like our generation it was kind of like here's music we want you to listen to, but there's
Go
also
find the stuff
all
that you
this
actually
other
did, yeah.
stuff that's behind on LimeWire and
I
Napster
used
and-
the LimeWire and
I'm
Napster,
just
man.
saying,
Yeah, it was such a different environment back then.
Yeah, your generation, anybody can make music and release it.
Yeah.
In my generation, you could.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
right.
definitely a huge difference between
Yes.
that era of music and this era of music because unless you were signed to a major record label,
No,
you had
nobody
no
could
way
hear
of getting music out to
Yeah,
anybody.
totally.
So there was no other way to create music at the level that I'm doing it right now. But also, I'm doing like everybody can do what I'm doing right now. Essentially, I mean, they might,
Just not as well.
I mean, everybody has their different levels of like abilities, but like, even stuff that I don't think like when I listen to it, I'm like, man, like I think my song's better than that is streaming 10 times better than mine. So like, I think that like music is it's obviously very subjective. And I think it's more about like, this goes back to a whole conversation about TikTok and social media, but it's like about how it's marketed and just about being in the right place at the right time.
The
I think
TikTok stuff is insane.
it's
I
unbelievable.
was
It
actually
totally changed music.
I was just telling I wasn't telling you. I forget who I was telling. There's this guy on TikTok, kind of poppy, kind of rap, Nick D.
Okay.
And when I first got
Chuck's
TikTok,
brother, Nick.
yeah,
Chuck
when
D.
when I first got TikTok,
Yeah.
I started following him, and the dude didn't have 2,500 followers.
Yeah.
He's now at like 2.5 million.
Yeah.
I think he's over 2 million monthly listeners on Spotify.
Yeah.
So the weird part is like I feel like I was with him.
Yeah.
Like, as he
And that's a huge part of it too, is like
Yes.
being like the early arriver to it and
But-
feeling like you've been a part of it from the beginning, which is, I don't think any different from like your
Right.
generation.
Right.
Because, I think my mom and my dad being from Jersey were early to Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen and saw them doing their thing before they were known to the world. And then they're that much more connected to them because they're like, man, I was there from the beginning. I
Yeah.
watched this whole thing grow.
But there's a weird thing
I
about
bet they like Southside Johnny. too.
They do love Southside Johnny. My
But
mom
you
You
tried to get
can't
us
be
to
from
do,
New Jersey and
My
not. You don't
mom-
even know who Southside Johnny is.
Mom,
He
if you're
is-
listening, she's tried to get us to do, we're having a party, Clyde Frog to do that for so long. We should do it.
You should.
Yeah, we should do it. We're having a party. Everybody's swinging.
Have you ever heard Nathaniel Ratliff's cover of that?
I don't think so.
He's got a cover of that live at Red Rocks.
Okay.
It's unreal.
I got to check it out.
Really, really good.
Yeah, I
Do
love
you-
Nathaniel.
Do you love
Yeah,
the
he's-
Nice Sweats?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's great.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So who, like, other than Bon Jovi, who are the big time people have you met?
Well,
Or
I mean,
just like the biggest one.
honestly, Maisie is like kind of a big deal. She's opening for Ed Sheeran all over Europe right now. My sister was a huge fan of hers before I even knew her music.
Okay.
And I didn't spend a whole bunch of time digging into her catalog before we went on tour. But after seeing her play and seeing her perform, she's the real deal. She's an unbelievable songwriter, great performer. That was like, I only came to realize that after being on the road with her for a little while. But she's awesome. She's great. Yeah, man, I don't know. Like, I feel like some of the people, like my girlfriend is a publisher, so she hangs around like a lot of like really popular songwriters, which is a different thing for Nashville because like a lot of these songwriters and these people who write these huge, massive songs, you'll never know because unless you're in the music industry and you are digging, Spotify's cool because you can, I don't know if you guys ever use this, but if you click the three like little dot things, you can go to show credits and it shows the songwriters and all the songs. And so one of the songwriters she works for is a guy named Luke Laird, who wrote a lot of the stuff on Golden Hour by Casey Musgraves. So I met him at her office Christmas party, and I was like a little starstruck by him because I'm a big fan of the stuff that he writes. And Casey Musgraves is just the one I'm quoting, but he's written for a lot of other people. I haven't met Lori McKenna. She works with her too, and she's a big time writer. So people that are like big to me. And then also for a while, I was in contact with a guy who worked with, his name is Alex Slivian, and he co-produced all of Harry Styles' first album. So to me, that was a really, really big deal. I haven't met him like face to face. It was over COVID, so we did everything over the phone. I'm trying to think of some other people, man. Like, yeah, Bon Jovi. I met Bill Cower.
There you go.
Yeah, there's a
There
guy.
you
There's a
go.
guy down in Nashville who I've become friends with who owns a publishing company, and I guess him and Bill Cower's daughter went to Princeton and played basketball together.
Okay.
And so I was in New York. He was having lunch with Bill, and he was like, "Why don't you come over and meet him?" And I don't really tell a bunch of people this, but before I became an Eagles fan, I was a big Steelers fan for the first part of my life. But then they lost.
Sorry to hear that.
They lost in the they lost in the playoffs. I think it was the Bengals, like in the first round in like '99 or 2000. I think.
And he jumped.
And I was so beside myself.
He dumped him.
I was so beside myself that I'm like, Mom, like I can't do it. Can't be a fan of the Steelers anymore. She's like, well, there's another franchise that'll disappoint you every single season. And they're called the Philadelphia Eagles.
Jersey, were they Eagles fans?
My mom was a Giants fan.
Okay. Depends what part of Jersey.
My Nona was born and raised in South Philadelphia. So she was like, well, your Nona, like, you know, and her brother were like Eagles fans, sort of. So you could watch them if you wanted to. And I'm like, okay, done. And then the Steelers go on to win a Super Bowl probably like 5 years after that. And I had to wait until 2017 for the Eagles to win there. But it was so worth it.
So as a songwriter, do you hear other songs and you're like, why didn't I write that? That seems so simple.
Yeah, all the time. And I think like that is kind of like a comforting thing to me to be like, wow, that's so simple, because then I'm like, I'm definitely overcomplicating it. I'm thinking way too hard about whether it's the lyric or what's happening musically, because coming from like a background where like the collective, I was so into jazz and, you know, being around a community of musicians, like everybody is always gravitating to the most complex, like difficult thing to perform, where that doesn't always, I mean, sometimes it translates to pop music well, but a lot of times like pop music is as simple, like keep it simple as possible.
Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's literally,
it's a one-line chorus,
same,
essentially.
and it's the same. Yep, and it's the same 4 chords the entire song, and it doesn't need to change, you know. And that's most pop songs. And so when I hear stuff like that, every time I think, well, maybe I'm dumbing it down or I'm watering it down too much, but I hear a pop song like As It Was. I don't know if you guys know that song, Harry Styles. It's off his new album. You know, it's not the same as it was. You guys haven't heard that?
How come whenever I ask you to sing a song, because you're like, do you know that song? I was like, no, sing it to me. You never do. He just sings it right out.
I know. Well, that's what he does. I don't know what to tell you.
I do. I does sing sometimes.
If you ask me to go shoot
we do it all the time. He's like, you know that song. I was like, well, sing me a couple bars. He's like, I'm not singing.
If you ever asked me to go shoot a 30-footer, I'd do it right away.
You would.
Oh, me too.
Yes.
Me too. We'll all go.
I don't
we'll
even
go on
have
the
to
court.
ask you to shoot. You would just shoot.
I would just do it. You probably would. I just know to do it. You
Yeah.
You'd have to tell me.
Yeah, but no, hairstyle like that song As It Was. It's the same 4 chords the whole song, and the lyric is really, really simple. The instrumentation is really simple, and I listen to a song like that. I was like, wow, why didn't I write something like that? You know, and I don't know. There's Jeff Buckley songs. He's also one of my favorite artists and one of my favorites. But yeah, short answer is yes.
Before we forget, we should have done this earlier. Where are you playing while you're here?
So I'm at the Old Corner tonight, 7:30 to 9:30.
And that's just you.
Just me, solo. Then I'm at Riverside Campground in Montgomery tomorrow with Clyde Frog, 8 to 11, I believe. And then we have a private party on Saturday, so don't worry about that. And then Sunday we're at the Brickyard, 6 to 9.
So you're outside in the
and
what are they called?
fingers crossed the Pine Square. Yeah, it looks like the weather's gonna be good on Sunday.
I think
it's beautiful, okay. So I think we'll be
Sunday
okay.
will be okay.
Tomorrow's gonna be a toss up. We're gonna be under like a, you know, it's like a patio area out there, so we'll be okay and away from the rain. Saturday's a party, so we'll figure it out. But Sunday will be good, and that'll be, you know, in here in town, right down the street.
So your Clyde Frog people are scattered all over.
Yeah.
When they call you and like, hey, we want to do this song, how long does it take you to learn it? Like, I'm guessing a half hour.
Yeah, maybe less. I mean, I can get, if I'm singing it, like the lyrics take me a little bit longer because I actually have to sit with it and like read the lyrics, listen through it like probably 5-10 times before I internalize it and can try to start performing it. But yeah, I mean, I've been playing music for long enough that like, you know, I can recognize most, like, again, pop music, it's like all pretty much the same chord progressions, just in different patterns and arrangements. So as it usually takes me 10, maybe 15 minutes to figure out what the chords are. I mean, and there might be different sections of the song. So the thing about music is like, you know, the verse just repeats over and over again. Then the chorus repeats over and over again. So there's usually max 3 or 4 different chord progressions you have to learn in a song before you get it. You're really learning, you know, 15 seconds, whatever the loop is, you know. So once I get that figured out, that usually takes me like, I'd say like 2 minutes for every section, 3 minutes for every section. So yeah, like 10 minutes. It ends up being, because there's usually 3 sections in every song. So, you know, 10 minutes.
All right, this is a boring question, but I'm guessing then, just because of the writing, the arrangement, the lyrics, all this stuff, you'll hear songs on albums that aren't hits, that you probably appreciate much more than me. That's just like, that song's all right.
Absolutely.
Because I just, in my Def Leppard article, because I've read a lot of Def Leppard, like they asked him what was his favorite song.
Yeah.
And it's a song that I was like, that song's not very good.
Of course.
And he talked about how many notes and how complicated it is. And I think he's like, as a musician, I'm the most proud of it.
Right.
And I was like, as a listener, I don't know if it's all that good.
100%.
But it was, so.
What song is that for you?
Yeah, do you have any like that?
That's a good question. Ah, man, I don't know.
That's too vague.
I don't know. I think there's a song that I released. I think it does get the love that it deserves, but I think that I kind of was hoping for more from it, is a song called First Avenue that I released. I think it was either October or November of 2021 that I really love. And it's not like it's like a super complicated thing. I just love the production on it and I love the song. And it's not even in my top 5 on Spotify. I think it's sitting at 6, and I like check every day because I'm like, I just want it to be number 5.
It's better than that.
Yeah, you know,
people suck.
I think it's better than the songs. I mean, I love all my songs, but I think it's better than the ones that are in my top 5. I at least feel
What is
more.
your top 5 right now? Do you know?
Let me look. I think it's probably You're the One That I Want.
I'm just curious.
No, the cover of You're the One That I
You're
Want.
the one that I want.
Yeah,
You want me to sing this?
that's been number 1. Yeah, you should sing that while I'm looking for it. You're the One That I Want's number 1. I think there's a song called Out of My Mind that's number 2. Yeah. A song called Be a Friend, which is the 3rd. Killing Time is 4, and then Awesome is 5.
Do those 5 surprise you? That's your top
2 and
5?
3 really surprised me.
Okay.
Yeah. Killing Time, not so much. Awesome, not so much. You're the One That I Want. Like, that's been my number 1 song for probably 2 years now, and that is surprising to me. First of all, that it stayed there for that long, and the fact that it got there in the first place, because it's a cover.
Yeah.
And I guess people really like it. I mean, they must, because it's it's my number 1 stream song. But yeah, it's surprising because, as a consumer music, I would hope that people are like hungry for like new releases as they come out. And my stuff always ends up getting there. Like First Avenue is on the come up right now because it's been out for almost 6 months now, more than that, like 8 months. But that's the thing with my music, at least, is like it takes a little while for stuff to catch on, and like doesn't always immediately do super, super well or like stream a lot in the first week. It like takes a little while for people to catch on to it and for it to make their way to them and find the right audience,
Yeah.
But yeah, those 5 songs, especially 2 and 3, really surprised me. I like those songs, but so the album that they're on is an album called Semicolon in Parentheses that I released in 2020, which we re-released a deluxe version that had a couple other songs that were like kind of B-sides that like were good songs I really liked but didn't fit for the album. And so those 2 songs, the 2 and 3, are on the deluxe version that were kind of like an afterthought, and I almost didn't even release. So that also, again, is encouraging to me because I'm like, these songs that I don't necessarily love and like I don't feel as connected to might connect with the audience in a way that I never expected it to. And so it gives me the encouragement to be like, just because this is my favorite song ever doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve to be shared with the world.
It also shows the disadvantage of the album too.
Yeah.
Like, because if you weren't locked into this mindset of like, I'm creating this album and I'm releasing it, you might have just put out those songs once they were ready.
Exactly.
And who knows where they'd be at
Yeah.
now.
Well, I've heard John Mellencamp doesn't love Jack and Diane.
Yeah.
And I've heard interviews with him. He's like, I don't understand why people love this song.
Yeah.
I know Bon Jovi wasn't sold on Living on a Prayer.
I know, and that's crazy to me.
Like that the band was like, no, this is great. And
Yeah.
he's like, okay.
Well, part of me too, like I feel like, am I kind of like carbon copying that attitude because I've heard that that's the case? Like Radiohead, Creep. I don't know if you guys know that song, but they literally didn't play it for 15 years because Tom York hated it so much. And the rest of them hated it so much too, because it kind of pigeonholed them into being this thing that they didn't want to be at all. And they spent 10 years breaking that down. And they only came back to it like a couple of years after, like, okay, we're not this anymore.
Right.
We've proved that. And so like, I wonder sometimes, am I imposing that on myself? And am I telling myself, this is good, but it's not me just because I want to be like a Bon Jovi who's like, oh, I don't like Living on a Prayer, or like Radiohead, I don't like Creep. When like Feeling Fine is a great song, you know?
I think he likes it now.
Yeah.
I think that the whole at the beginning, well, I know Pour Some Sugar on Me was the 5th single off that album.
That's crazy.
And they were just like, they were almost done touring.
Yeah.
And then it hit, and then they're like, we got to get back out on the road. So it is like, even the people that are close to it, that well, heck, Drew Bledsoe was starting over Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't know what they had.
Yeah.
And he gets in there, and so
it's about right place. I mean, so much of it's timing, and like we forget that, and I forget that too. You know, a lot of times, again, those songs that I love, that I think deserve a little bit more recognition. It just like that time might come. Like that's the other exciting thing about TikTok too, is like a lot of this music. I've seen songs that have been out for 5-6 years, like Lizzo, for example, like Good as Hell, and what's the other one? I forget. Anyway, that album was out for like 5 years before those songs really hit, you know?
Wasn't Hunger Games out for like 3 years before it blew up? I think the book. I thought the same thing happened with the Hunger Games book. It just in the whole creative artistic world, it is what hits and what doesn't, and who even knows what's going to hit.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't know Star Wars was going to be any good.
Yeah.
They
There's
were
so
just-
many cases of it where like the person who created it, like you can easily get discouraged by that too. But I think people will find a way to it if they really love it. And you kind of just like have to find a way to put it in front of them and for them to find it. Because in the Def Leppard's case, like, you know, they had a major label behind them who was like, we love this. We want to just keep pushing this stuff. Let's just throw it out there. And like the band was probably on board, but they weren't like pushing super hard with all the marketing, you know, they were just doing whatever the label told them to do. But now as an independent artist, you know, it's your job to make sure that you're getting your music in front of as many people as possible, because it's literally playing the lottery.
Yeah.
Right. Because I believe that my music is really, really great. And I think that there's a great audience for it that's even bigger than what exists right now. But, you know, those people have no idea how to find it. And I need to be better about like finding them and giving it to them and showing it to them.
Do you ever want to tinker with your old stuff? Like you talked about whether or not you want to play it, but like almost like the Kanye of like it's never actually done.
Yeah.
Do you ever listen to your old stuff and go?
Are you saying is he like Kanye? Are you comparing him to Kanye?
Absolutely, yes.
I love Kanye.
Yeah, thank you.
He's crazy.
He is crazy. He is.
Have you
seen the documentary on Netflix? It's really good. It's worth a watch. But anyway, that's a good question. I think when it comes to like my approach to that would be like changing the way that I play it live as opposed to actually going back and changing the recording, because like Taylor Swift is doing that right now, but she's only doing that because of the whole contract dispute with her and her previous manager. But it is cool because she's getting to reimagine a lot of this stuff and do it in like the context of what she is more akin to, like the production style she's more akin to now. So if I were to do that, yeah, I would go back and I would probably totally produce Feeling Fine in a different way, because that production style is so different and not, I don't want to say I don't like it, but I just don't think that I would release something that's like that anymore. Sure. Unbreaker, Sleep, like all that stuff on my first EP. And the writing is also very different too. But that doesn't mean they're not really good songs. But yeah, I don't think, to be honest, I don't think I've ever thought or ever would go back and yeah, like maybe at some point in my career, like I'll go back and I'll put together like a best of and like re-record everything. That could be pretty cool. But no, I've never thought about just like song over song, like going back and redoing stuff. Yeah. Because, you know, when you release music, it's like kind of like a snapshot in time, and that's what it should be. And I mean, Kanye, I understand his perspective that like it's never finished and it's always a work in progress. And that's really healthy, and I admire that. But for me, I think like there's kind of like a sense of finality of it, of like, okay, it's done. Here I'm sharing it with the world, and like they either like it or they don't, you know? Yeah.
Okay, since you're the right generation, I'm the wrong. I've gotten into arguments with people about this. I think Miley Cyrus is really talented.
She is.
Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. She's super talented.
Who's telling you she's not?
Old people.
No, she's really, really talented.
I have her last album, because her last album went #1 on the rock and roll chart.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is the kid who sang Party in the USA have a rock? And I love it. It's Plastic Hearts. I don't know if you've ever heard it.
I haven't heard the whole thing. I've heard a couple songs, but
I think it's great.
Well, she does that cover. Does she have the Heart of Glass cover on that one?
No, it's not on that one. But I've seen her cover. She does Stevie Nicks covers. Yeah. I think she's incredibly talented. But because of she was young, she was Hannah Montana, and then she was a little quirky. She got stuck in that Bieber thing, like growing up in front of the public, and then they try to grow up so fast. And
well, this is funny. She did a song with Lil Nas X that's near the end of his most recent album, and you would love it.
I think
the irony being there is like I don't think you would ever want to listen to a Lil Nas X song.
Lil Nas X is the Old Town Road guy, right?
Yeah.
See, I know what I'm talking about.
His new album is sick, actually.
From
Montero is awesome.
From start to finish, I was shocked at how you can listen to the whole thing and never turn it off.
Is he the one that made the crazy video that
you
showed me?
He is the one who made the crazy video.
See, I remember the crazy video. I don't remember the song.
He did the video, and it kind of, I think it honestly, I clearly didn't hurt him from an artist perspective. Like, he's doing just fine. But I do think for, like, people above the age of 40, they're missing out on songs they would actually enjoy if it wasn't for that video.
Totally.
Because he has a handful of songs on that album that, like, my mom would love.
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of that stuff, the new stuff, too, like, it kind of is happening in tandem with the TikTok generation, too, is, like, a lot of it is shock value, too. And, like, doing stuff, like, more from an aesthetic visual standpoint that is shocking. In order to get people's attention and get them to actually listen. But once they've actually got you in, the music's really, really good, you know? So I think, but that shock value thing turns off a lot of people in the, you know, older generation because they're offended by it, you know? Whereas, like, I don't know, that's a whole different conversation, but I think it's an interesting play. And like, it also just is a testament to how short people's attention spans are and how hard it is to keep their attention, you know? But I forget what was the original question?
It was about Miley Cyrus.
Oh, that's yes, super talented. And I respect, so one of the reasons why I love Radiohead and the Beatles so much is because they weren't afraid to push into different territory and totally redefine who they were and what their sound was. Miley Cyrus is one of those people because she did start as Hannah Montana, where she was this teeny bopper, like pop Disney Channel person. Then she kind of grew up really quickly. And I think Wrecking Ball was like one of those songs, and like, it's my party or whatever. And she was really doing like totally different, like off the wall stuff. And then she kind of settled in. Now she's doing the whole rock thing, and
she like Joan Jett played on her album. I think Billy Idol played on her album. Like,
and she's incorporating all of these old like rock icons, and she's stepping into new territory. She's not afraid to go there, and I admire that. And
she can do it because, like you just said, Joan Jett, like she was on SNL with Kid Laroi.
Yeah,
she's on the Little Nas X. Like her range is just absurd.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's super talented, and again, that's her range. Like
but I was right. I don't even remember who I had the argument with, but I was right.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. She's talented.
Really anything else you want to plug? We talked about the shows this week, and obviously you're going to plug those again.
Yeah.
Anything else coming up? A song a month?
Yeah, doing a song a month. I don't know what the release date is. It should be sometime in mid-June. It's a song called Love in General. It's coming out in June. And then just keep an eye out, like, on my Instagram, Facebook. I do have TikTok. If you have TikTok, I want to follow me on TikTok. My following there is a lot more humble than it is on other places. But I'm always teasing demos on there, and I do that on Instagram sometimes. So if you're interested in listening in and getting a sneak peek to what I've been working on, definitely follow me on social media. Like I said, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that stuff. And keep an eye out because I'm releasing a song a month. I'm playing at the Old Corner tonight. So if you're not doing anything, come by. I'm going to play a couple of those new songs tonight. So you can be, some of these songs I've never played in public before. So that'll be really, really cool for me and hopefully for the audience. Yeah. And then, Clyde Frog is not associated with, I don't play any of Dylan Rockoff songs there, but I haven't mentioned this yet, but I've been writing a good amount of rock and like specifically for Clyde Frog. So we're going to play some new original music this weekend that we've been working on. And I'm excited about that too. So you can come catch some of that new stuff this weekend. And then I'll be back in Williams. So I want to bring my band back here sometime this fall. I would love to put a tour together. I'm still working on that right now, but keep an eye out for that. Again, social media is the best way to keep up with everything that's going on for me. And Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, anywhere that you listen to music, all my stuff is there. So if you're interested, go check it out today or keep an eye out for when I release new music because I think it's really good stuff and I'm really excited about it.
This is probably revolving.
Do you think he's done that a time or two?
He's rehearsed that very well. It probably changes from time to time. Do you have a favorite cover to sing?
Ooh. Man, that's another good
it
question.
probably just goes with mood and life. And
it's definitely mood.
Probably crowd, too.
Yeah, definitely crowd.
I'm sure there's, depending on where you're at or the crowd, there's ones that just, they feed off of and it has to be better than others.
Absolutely. I will say with Clyde Frog, like, I do particularly love playing War Pigs. And it's so, like...
It's Black Sabbath.
Yeah, Black Sabbath, yeah. And, like, I don't know, because I grew up on, like, when I first got into guitar and, like, guitar, I was so into playing as hard and fast and loud as I could. And so when we play stuff like that, like we did The Trooper by Iron Maiden the last time we were in town. And like, I don't know, I feel like for me, like when we play stuff like that, it feels more
Trooper's
like
Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
I knew that.
It was on.
He was telling you that. He wasn't telling. I knew that.
Guitar Hero 2.
Yeah.
But no, playing stuff like that.
I think it's on Aces High. I think that's the album. It might not.
He just said it's on Guitar Hero 2.
No, that's not the album.
That's the game.
I know.
That's what the album should have been called.
The best part about Mark is sometimes when you're sarcastic, he does it.
But no, I think the reason for that is like when I first got into music and was really falling in love with the guitar, that was the stuff that I was listening to and wanting to play. So it's almost like reconnecting with my inner child when we play stuff like that. And, as Dylan Rockoff, maybe one day I'll be able to get a little heavier than what I am right now. But to go from, awesome to War Pigs is tough unless I totally reimagine it. But yeah, for me, like the heavier stuff and like this time, I don't know if you guys, I saw Jack White recently in Nashville and he's awesome. He's like keeping rock and roll alive.
We're the White Stripes.
Yeah.
I know who
Jack White. We're doing it. You guys know the song Icky Thump?
No.
Oh, I didn't either.
I know the Icky Shuffle.
Yeah. I know the Icky Shuffle. So what was his actual name?
Icky Woods.
Icky Woods.
He just does that cold cuts commercial. I'm getting some cold cuts.
Yeah. I'm getting some cold cuts.
Yeah.
But no, we're playing Icky Thump by the White Stripes. I'm looking forward to that one. I don't know, but then there's also like Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley has always been one of my favorite songs to play. Just because I don't know, I just think it's a beautiful song.
How about and I'm blanking on her name. Who's the girl that sings with Clyde Frog?
Oh, Tess.
What's your favorite song that she does?
Question 2. I do love when she does "You Ought to Know" by Alanis Morissette. Yeah. Or
that's a great song.
That's a great song too. Man, she sings some Zeppelin too that she crushes. Any song where she just also Give Me One Reason, she absolutely vocally destroys that song. She really lets her voice rip on that one. So I love when she does that one too.
You know that one.
Yeah, I would say so. And then I know Tori doesn't sing as much anymore, but I used to love when he would do like Get Back, and we used to do like Red House by Jimi Hendrix, which we haven't done in a long time, but I would love to break that out again. Everybody's got like their moments. I love when Chris Kohler does his drum solo on Frankenstein. That's one of my favorite covers to do too. Garrett kills it on Papa Was a Rolling Stone. He does a lot of really cool. Everybody's got their moments, you know. But yeah, I mean, the heavier stuff I'm partial to in Clyde Frog, because it's my moment to get to do that where I don't get to in Dylan Rockoff stuff.
You love it when they play Sabbath. Love it. That's
Sabbath?
your favorite. Yeah.
I don't mind it. Listen, I just don't.
What are your? Let me ask you guys. What are your favorite covers that Clyde Frog does?
I just don't get in the car and say to myself like, I cannot wait to put on some Zeppelin. Like it's just not what I do.
No, I get it. The thing that I appreciate about you guys, and there's another local band that I've only ever seen once, but there's a couple of realtors in it called 180, and the ability to go all over the map.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're not going to see, you know, like 80s cover band. You're hearing stuff from the 60s. Right. You're hearing stuff from a couple years ago, and then where you're asking the young people like, who sings this, or you're pulling out your phone and you're trying to find lyrics.
Yeah.
The versatility that you guys show, it is hard to like any sort of music and not enjoy what Clyde Frog does.
Oh, well, thank you.
And that's what I think is fun about it, because you'll see people like your parents are always there when you're playing.
Yeah.
But you see people of their generation, you see people of and you see people of your generation that are friends of yours, and you just cover the spectrum so much.
I might be getting this wrong. Don't you guys cover What's Going On?
Yeah.
Or
What's Up, you mean? Well, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. I think we did that a couple, but mostly it's What's
And that's
Up,
why they didn't call it What's Going On, because of the Marvin Gaye song. They wouldn't mess with the title, because they keep singing What's Going On, but they didn't want to title it that.
Which is smart.
See, I'm not implying that's your best cover, but when you have the right crowd
and people sing it back, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that might be your best cover from like the mirror looking back at you.
Yeah, and I get
you're on
that.
the other side of that. That's one of my
totally understand that, and I love it for the same reason. You know,
that's Four Non Blondes, and that's from the 80s.
One hit wonder, and just like to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, like I wouldn't get in my car and turn on What's Up by the Four Non Blondes. I don't think I've listened to that song since I learned it for Clyde Frog. But
when it comes on the radio, you turn it up.
Of course.
Okay. I get that.
Yeah, and I love playing it too for the exact same reason you said, because it's the moment where the crowd gets to like everything they've been holding in the whole time, and they haven't had the opportunity to have their moment and make their noise. That's their moment right there, and they are always there with it and excited to sing it back to us, which is so much fun.
Yeah. And they can all sing it, because everybody sing it, and then you all sound. It's like at church. Everybody sounds good at church because you blend it in with everybody.
You get enough
else.
Voices together.
It's amazing. You can't sound bad when there's too many voices.
We'll settle this debate before you go. I struggle with the 80s.
Okay.
To me, there's a cheesiness, which he has said.
That's part of it. Like part of the beauty.
It's true.
I've said about the 80s with pop culture, whether it's movies or music or whatever it may be, the 80s to me feel like we were almost ready to do a lot of this stuff, but we didn't know how to do it yet. Yeah. And that's why if you look at like 90s movies and music, like for cinema, a lot of people view movies like that early 90s run was ridiculous.
Sure.
But I feel like we had perfected all the things we were trying to do in the 80s. Yeah. So to me, I always struggle with 80s pop culture, because there's just such a cheesiness and an unreadiness to it. That I'm just like, you can't tell me the 90s weren't better when I compare.
And I totally hear that.
And he disagrees, which is completely fine. Like I totally get that aspect of it, but that's my 80s.
Sure, and it's hard for me to talk about it and dissect it too, because I only know it from the frame of reference of like the documentaries I've watched and the music I listen to, and like my parents too. My parents grew up in that generation, so a lot of that stuff that they love, you know, I love because of the nostalgia factor and because I grew up listening to it, because it's what they were listening to. But what I will say, I think the thing about the 80s, and I think that's a great way to characterize it, is like kind of having this element of not quite being ready and like coming of age with this stuff. I think a lot of that has to do with like the technological revolution that happened in the late 70s, because when you speaking from music technology standpoint, a lot of that technology that they were implementing was new, and basically like music sampling kind of started in the 80s, where like you weren't actually using natural organic sounds. You were hitting a snare drum, recording it, and then being able to play it back like on a little sample pad. And it's the same thing with like keyboards and stuff like that. So I think a lot of that technology when it was first introduced was really, really raw and kind of cheesy sounding, because it wasn't exactly right. They hadn't perfected it yet. And then I think what's cool about the 90s then is like there was this sort of like air of rebellion that kind of came in against all of that stuff. So like that's where you get the Nirvana and the Pearl Jam and the Alice in Chains and all that grunge stuff and a lot of the stuff that was happening in the media at the time, like, you know, the rebellious high school guy was like the big thing in like the 90s. I guess it was in the 80s too, but like
the 80s, it was just a kid smoking outside the school.
Yeah.
In his denim jacket with.
And
you know
also 50s movies in the 80s because Grease came out in the 80s, right?
70s. No, Grease.
70s.
I think it was late 70s.
Yeah.
But it's still. But I said like the cinematic version I always gave him is if Jurassic Park would have been done in the 80s, it's just this cheesy dinosaur movie and it never. That's the point is like people tried to though. Like there's movies in the 80s that they weren't ready to make, but they made them because it was like we're doing this.
Like what?
Like to me, like I still think like the aesthetics of E.T. is very like people just I get crushed for that because Spielberg.
Yeah.
But like there's still like the alien wasn't ready. Like the aesthetics
of
him flying on the aesthetics of him flying on
the basket on the bike.
The aesthetics of like him flying on the bike weren't ready.
Sure.
So again, like I do think the concept of E.T. But if that movie would have been made in like '94, it's a completely. I just think the movie's better. Like I think you take anything from the 80s cinematically and you move it into like that early 90s. It's just better because they just knew what to do.
Do you think that? Let me ask you this: do you think that the new Star Wars movies are better? Like the new generation?
I don't, but I also think like
that's a very good point.
But I also think like the curve also like flattened out.
Yeah.
Like we're just getting to a point where like how much new stuff can you do?
Sure.
I mean that's why Avatar captured everybody's imagination. Even if you didn't love Avatar, it was just like, what is this?
Sure.
But I don't think every movie can be Avatar.
Right.
So I think we're on the back end of that like technological cinematic.
And I'm always wondering, like, same thing with like Spotify and Apple and TikTok and all that. Like, what we're due for something new. Like, what is the next thing? I think.
When we talked to Jerry, Jerry thinks it's audio. Like Jerry thinks the whole 3 to 10 second video aspect of it, and it's just going to be the 3 to 10 second audio. Like, you just want to hear it and be done with it.
Well, I don't know if you guys like are familiar with. I'm sure you've heard of NFTs, but like that's the kind of stuff that's working right now. Yeah. And like Kathleen Regan, the artist I talked about, like she's very involved in that space, and I would like to get more involved in that space because I just think like crypto and the whole Web3 thing, whether or not you think it's got like actual legs. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people said the same things. They did say the same thing about the computer and the internet back in the day. Like, I mean, we can look back in history so many times where people were, and the Beatles, like on the record labels who passed on the Beatles, like, you know, like you have to be like an early arriver to something. And I do think as just, I don't know, maybe that's like, I am hopping on the bandwagon because I see a lot of people doing it, but I do think that there's a huge future and the metaverse and all that stuff too.
I think that especially for music and for you, the NFT side of it, it's the commission of it.
Yeah.
You're just financially, you're going to benefit so much from NFT because every time somebody passes on your music, you are getting a piece of coin from that. And whether it's $1 or whether it's a Bitcoin or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that like the NFT side of it, I don't even know if people recognize like the tidal wave is over top of it. And I don't even know if people realize
what are your thoughts on that, Mark?
About to crash down.
All I know about NFTs is what he tells me.
It's hard to conceptualize. It's hard to get on board with something that you can't explain.
I keep trying to like not warn you, but I keep trying to tell him like it's closer than you think.
Sure.
Like it's
definitely.
There's
like,
also a point.
I think before 2025, you're gonna want to see a baseball game, and you're gonna have to buy an NFT to see it. You're not gonna be able to go see the Orioles in 2025 unless you buy an NFT. That's how
because the ticket's going to be coming.
Because the ticket's going to be coming.
But see, to my generation, it's just going to be a new form of a ticket. Like I went to see them in Toursville District playoff game yesterday. My ticket was on my phone, and my son's, and they had to scan it. So in my world, it's just a different form of ticket. You also get to the age where, like, when we've talked about Bitcoin and crypto, and like there's this point of like I'm probably going to get through life and not need it, even though I don't disagree that it's not going to be here. And I don't disagree that we're going to go with credit cards and with Venmo and with all the other aspects of it.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to survive and never own Bitcoin.
See, I don't know. I think it's going to kind of get to the point where, like, you know, we had the same attitude about cell phones back in like the early 2000s. And now everybody's got an iPhone, and you literally, it makes things so much more difficult without one.
Everyone's grandmother has
exactly.
We talked about that though, but because it makes our world so easy.
Yes.
Is Bitcoin going to make the world easier than my Visa card?
I think the way it's going to make it easier is like the ledger is done for you. And so you don't have to keep track.
You explained that to me, and you might be right.
So like this idea of like keeping a checkbook or keeping your
you don't have multiple stuff.
It's going to be like one ledger right there, and you don't, and that's going to be like the easy.
And I can see how that works.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to end up. But I think music is going to be because Jerry and I have talked about this as well. I think what you're doing is going to be one of the main like pushers. Like the reason I'm so confident that by 2025, like people are gonna have to deal with this stuff.
Sure.
I think musicians are gonna look around and they're just gonna be like, my creative compensation is so much more with this NFT or this blockchain, or because it's yours, and every time somebody manipulates it, whether it's selling it, buying it, whatever it is, you're gonna see X amount for that.
Sure.
And you just can't. When you look back at how much creatives have been shafted, it's so funny. I just saw there's like a 60-minute corny boy band documentary about how those guys got absolutely shafted.
Is it the Luke Pearlman? I just watched it the other day. They got rocked
and
for
here's
sure.
The funny part is like now knowing like in 2025 that never would have happened to them because they're just going to be so covered by this NFT stuff. And so I think music's going to push it. I really, really do.
Yeah, music and entertainment and media just in general.
The bands that got
art
off are just
it's the Luke Pearlman thing's
wild. Wild.
All right, speaking of bands, so 2023, next year, if there was like a genie in a bottle and said you could open for some band on tour that's still around, not like Zeppelin or Jimi Hendrix, who would you be?
Harry Styles.
Oh, there you go.
It's a good
for sure.
Ed Sheeran or
Ed Sheeran for sure too, 100%. I mean, John Mayer too. Like they're probably like shooting a little high. I mean,
Did you see his scene? Sorry, Ed Sheeran in the Beatles movie. What was it? Let It Be. Yeah, yesterday.
But I actually haven't seen yesterday.
He was in it.
Well, he said like, "Hey, dude," like
he did a cameo, and they did some. He was really, really good at it.
Yeah, he was also in Game of Thrones for an episode. He was Game of Thrones. I don't watch it either, but I know that he was in it
because he was playing himself in this because it was about Beatles and songwriting, and they did this. Hey, this is Ed Sheeran, and it was really cool. And he ended up being like the loser in the scene, and he played it really well, and it was cool.
You said you mentioned Mayer like being real, but Mayer did like kind of like a Western. I don't want to call it country, but he kind of did. Have you ever? Like
man, I'm open to everything. Obviously I'm in the heart of country music. And
what was it? I think it was Born and Raised.
Born and Raised is actually my favorite John Mayer album, to be honest with you. And Paradise Valley is great too, and it's kind of like in that same territory, maybe even more country and less acoustic than that.
Imagine Gun is one of my favorite songs.
Both of those albums are amazing.
Which John Mayer albums suck? I want to hear you tell John which ones that he missed on.
I'm going to be honest, John. I don't like Sob Rock, his newest album. I don't like it. I think there are a couple songs.
Kidding.
Is that the one with New Light?
Yeah, I mean that's probably the best. That's a good song, but the rest of the album is not. See, and I feel like a hypocrite for saying this, but because we were just talking about the '80s, and I love the '80s, but I think he took because the '80s are in right now. I don't know if you guys have noticed, like a lot of.
I don't think they ever left.
From a music production standpoint, from a style standpoint, like it's in, and it's, whether you like it or not. But I think I understand what he was trying to do. He was really trying to take because he grew up in I think mid '80s, and like his parents listened to all that stuff, like Africa, like Toto, and like Europe and stuff like that. And I think he was really trying to like bring in the nostalgia factor, the stuff that he was raised on, and incorporate it into what he was doing now because he saw this trend was happening, wanted to stay relevant, and I think he did it, and I think he executed it. It's just not for me. Because I love Continuum. I love when he leans into the blues and the country and the acoustic thing. And there just like aren't that many moments like that. There's like one song on Sob Rock that I actually really like. I can't even remember what the name of it is, but that's actually, I mean, I saw the John Mayer Trio in the Apollo Theater in Harlem, which is probably like one of the best shows I've ever seen. It was just him, Steve Jordan, and Pino Palladino, they're amazing together. But the Sob Rock tour, I literally was like, I'm not going to see it because I don't really care about these songs. Like, I'm going to love half the set list because I know he's going to play all his old hits, but I don't really care. I'd rather see him the next time he's on tour or touring an album that like I actually like.
Did you hear Steven Tyler's back in rehab?
I heard, yeah, that's really sad.
So he's going to miss, I guess, the first.
They're doing a residency in Vegas.
The first part of the residency they're going to cancel, and they're going to try to do the second part.
Yeah.
Have you heard Springsteen's latest album, Letters to You?
I actually haven't.
You should check it out.
I think my mom and dad were telling me that it was really, really good.
Because I was just like, he's just still here. He's just
sure.
But it is. I think it's ridiculously good for a 70-some-year-old guy who has no need to still do it, and he's still doing it.
Is he that old?
He's got to be.
No, he's got to be 60.
No, I think we looked it up.
He just had a birthday, and we looked it.
We looked it up. I think it might have been 69.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I'm even surprised he's that old. I saw him I think it was 5-6 years ago at Bryce Jordan Center, and man, he played for 3.5, 4 hours and was all over the stage all night. And back then he was what, 62? He's already in his 60s. Yeah, unbelievable.
You might be different just because you're so involved with it. What was the first live music you saw after the pandemic?
After the pandemic?
He's 72.
72. Wow.
That's unbelievable. I can't believe it was in the 70s. I'm trying to think of the first show that I saw. I mean, being down in Nashville, like stuff was like, to be honest with you, to be honest, you know, like we were shut down in Nashville like March and April, and then the owners of all those Broadway bars were like, basically, screw you guys. We're gonna reopen whether you like it or not. And so they were open, and they pretty much were pushing. They were closed for 2 months in 2020, and then May onwards, they were open to varying levels of like attendance. But and I never went down there, but like I had the opportunity to. During the pandemic, there was a house show. Have you guys heard that song, ABCDFU? Yeah. Yeah. So Gail actually played at that house show. Okay. I played at that house show. She lives in Nashville. I think she's from Knoxville or something like that. Okay. But we were actually represented by the same attorney for a little while.
You might actually know that. Was she on her way, or did that?
She's been doing it.
Is that really like a TikTok viral?
She's been at it for a while. She'd been releasing music for.
Have you heard that song? There's a song, the catch of it.
A, B, C, D, E, F, U, and your mom, and your sister, and your job.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it came, but in
see,
my opinion,
why didn't I write that?
So,
in my opinion, it came out of nowhere.
Just for example, like that night, I was at that show. She was playing. I was in the audience, and somebody was like, "Play A, B, C, D, F, U," and she was like, kind of, because that song was written back then, probably a year before it hit, you know. And probably even before that, you know, and people had heard it, and like the industry knew about it. And there was like, once you've got, I feel like that's kind of how it works, because she signed a label deal like right around that time. Yeah. And so they had started formulating and plotting, and like there was a lot going on behind the scenes to kind of make that work. Not to take anything away from like the hard work that she did or how talented she is, but she had a good team and a good strategy behind her to make that whole thing work. But yeah, she's been doing it. I think she's young. I think she's like maybe 18. But she's been doing it and like hanging around Nashville and like writing there since she was like 12, 13 years old. She's been at it for a long time. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like the whole TikTok thing.
She's been at it for a long time. She's 18.
But I mean, yeah. But it did feel like she was shot out of a cannon.
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously, you know, you still got to you still got to load it, light it up, like all that. But, I mean, it was like nowhere and then here. Yeah. And you couldn't get away from that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great song. I mean, I get it. It's just like, I listen to a lot of her other music. It's the same thing, like kind of with Maisie. Like when I was on tour with her, we had my guitar in the back of the bus, just trading back and forth, playing the songs for each other. And some of the songs she played for me, I'm like, man, are you going to release this? That's like my favorite song of yours. And for whatever reason, whether it's the label who doesn't like it or whether it's like not something she's prepared to release, she's just like kind of like, I'm not sure. It's the same thing with Gail. Like she played a bunch of songs at the house show that night that I'm like, man, this is an incredible song. And it's just so interesting to be the ones that end up working and the ones that end up being the ones that they want to promote. And yeah, you know, I guess that's why I'm not on the industry side. That's why I'm on the creative side. Because I'm just going to write as much as I can and you also kind of have to trust the people around you to know this song is great and this is right for you right now. Because a lot of times I don't feel like I'm as in touch with that as like the industry is. So it's kind of like trusting your gut as a creative, but also surrounding yourself with people who you can trust to keep it real with you. And recognize, you know, there might be an opportunity here that you don't necessarily see yourself as the creative. Yeah.
I just keep looking at Purple Rain. Can you tell him how good Prince is?
Prince is amazing. I was just at the Museum of African American Music
in Nashville.
Like
a Mount Rushmore? I know we went through like your influences.
Yeah.
Like, is there a Mount Rushmore for you?
Jeff Buckley would definitely be on it. Okay. Oh man, that's so hard.
He can't fit four.
It's gonna be.
Is this 4 people?
Well, I mean, that's the Mount Rushmore. I mean, it doesn't. You know, don't kill yourself trying to think of 4.
Yeah, Jeff Buckley.
I guess my point was, does Prince make it?
I don't think Prince makes it for me. I mean, he's great. I love Prince, but I don't think he's on my Mount Rushmore. Okay. Yeah, I think Kendrick Lamar, honestly. He's one of my favorite living artists. His new album is incredible. I love everything he does. Yeah, amazing.
I listened to it for the first time through this past weekend.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, he's great.
But his you have to listen to it multiple times. I mean, I got to the end of the album and I felt like I had forgotten the first part. Like I knew I enjoyed it, but you're taking in so much.
It's also different from like his last couple albums because on Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City, you know, Good Kid, Mad City had like all those voicemails that kind of pushed the story along.
Kendrick
and it was like the narrative.
A rapper.
Yeah.
Well, this is what's funny because every time you say that, Kendrick, like when I think of rappers, You know, you've got Lil Nas X, you've got Wiz Khalifa. I hear Kendrick Lamar, and I was like, who does he play for?
He's a rapper.
And then I'm like, oh no, he's not an NBA player. He's a rapper.
You're thinking Kendrick Perkins.
Because he just has a normal name.
You know,
and it just doesn't work.
You know Kendrick Lamar because he was the best performer at the Super Bowl.
Absolutely, without question.
No, I know who
better than 50
Lamar
Cent hanging upside down.
But my immediate thought is like his name, like somewhere along the line, somebody had to go up to him and be like, dude, you can't go with the name Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
Did you see the behind the scenes video of 50 getting into the bar before the he looks like he's 17. He so someone was behind because the way the set was.
Yeah.
So someone was behind and he like walks back. He did it like 3 seconds before his cue. So it's not like he was sitting there on the bar for like 2 minutes waiting to. It was like 10 seconds away. He's walking towards the bar.
Yeah.
5 seconds away, jump up, wrap around, and 2 seconds later, reveal.
That's
and
so funny.
It was nuts.
Have you guys ever seen Wayne's World?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know the scene where it's the guy, I forget what his name is, but they walk into his apartment and he's hanging upside down sleeping.
Yes.
That was the first thing I thought when I saw 50 Cent. Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I thought
great.
it was one of the more entertaining. Like
I think
didn't
it's the
know
best
how
one.
great the performances were, but from an entertainment standpoint and just the value of like, did I enjoy it?
Yeah.
It was
my favorite one in recent memory is Bruno Mars's because I'm also a huge Bruno Mars fan.
We got into it last year about I thought The Weeknd was severely underrated personally.
I think he's a great singer. I thought the show was just a little weird, and I think it's a lot of that was probably because of COVID, because they were limited with what they could do, so they kind of had to adapt a little bit. Yeah. But man, I love his voice and I love his music. I mean, he just played banger after banger, and you know they did some weird stuff with like the filming and stuff like that. But I also think it got a lot of hate that it didn't deserve. I thought it was really good. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
He's someone you talk about like a journey through.
Yeah.
Because I remember like at frat parties listening to like his first original. I wouldn't even call them albums. They were just some of his songs were like 6 minutes long. It's just him just kind of like crooning over it. And to where he is now is
massive. And it's interesting because I think Bruno Mars is an entertainer and his music is so much like Michael Jackson, but I think The Weeknd's voice sounds more like Michael Jackson.
You know what's funny is when after the funeral, when he had first passed, everyone was like, Neo's going to replace him. And then Neo like fell off a cliff, which is so random because he was like the front runner for that kind of like pop black superstar. Sure. And then it just never happened.
Totally. Yeah.
Really weird. I've never like dug into it. I'm sure like there's something.
I wasn't aware of that either. I guess I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. Like, everyone was like kind of saying like Neo's next, and it just kind of fell off.
Yeah. Interesting.
Neo was an R&B singer.
I've heard of it.
I love how you guys are.
I've heard of it.
This is so good.
This is the gimmick of the show. I'm not sure if it works, but this is
much of this show doesn't work.
I'm enjoying being here and watching you guys.
Well, I was just thinking, he's going to play. He's got a show tonight. He's got a solo show tonight. Then he's got 3 shows with Clyde Frog. And when he's heading back to Nashville, he's going to say his favorite 90 minutes of the week was sitting here with us. There's no doubt. No, there's no doubt. It's just going to be what was second. That's
one last plug before you go.
Yeah, where are you at? When are you going to be there?
Okay. Old Corner tonight, 7:30 to 9:30. We'll be at the Riverside. When I say we, I mean Clyde Frog from 8 to 11 on Friday. And then we'll be at the Brickyard from 6 to 9 on Sunday with Clyde Frog. My Instagram handle is @Dylan Rockoff. My Twitter handle is @Dylan Rockoff. Facebook, I'm under the name Dylan Rockoff. Also, one thing I want to plug, which I haven't mentioned to anybody yet, which I'm probably going to mention to the show.
Oh, this is breaking news.
So there's this website called Songfinch, which is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's custom curated songs for special occasions. I'm on Songfinch now under the name Alexander Ray. If you're at all interested in having me write a custom song for you, look me up on Songfinch for a special occasion, whether it's an anniversary or a just because or a Mother's Day or Father's Day or a show intro. I'll write a song for you.
Can someone if his girlfriend gets pissed off at him, can he call you and you write a song to make her happy again?
Totally. I'll write a song for whatever you want.
Do you want to just pay him up front?
She probably does that behind my back. Like I don't even. I feel like Gianna and her are probably close enough in general that like if she really wanted Dylan to write her a song, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out of
I would do it. I would totally do it. Yeah.
She was around for like the birthdays and.
Hannah was always around the house for sure. Yeah.
There you go. So it could happen. So this is my last question because then we really do have to go.
Totally.
We don't have to go. You.
we really do have to go.
What time is it?
Bogue,
it's almost
2. Bogue.
Yeah.
Who we both know very well. I don't know if our viewership, maybe we'll have, but Bogue was on the show.
You guys, if you haven't, you should have him back on.
Yes.
We had him on the show.
One-on-one, game to 11. What happens? See, I knew this was the most exciting question.
Game one game.
One game to 11. He's crafty.
He is crafty,
and he has that. And his game gets better as he gets older.
He's much taller than me too, and that's always been the tough thing.
He's glued to the floor.
Exactly, so I think right now, and Ryan, if you're listening to this, I hope you are.
He was listening
while I'm home, I want to play you in one-on-one. I think I could out hustle him right now. I think it would be close. I think
you're saying he's just lazy now.
I don't know though. He's trim. He's trim and slim.
Is he? Well, I haven't seen him, so Ryan, show yourself.
He's walking 27 holes a day.
He's walking 27 holes a day. I've been running.
Is he walking or is he taking a cart?
Well, that I don't know.
I've been running a mile a day. I've been hitting the gym a little bit myself. I know it doesn't necessarily look like it, but
wait, isn't that the purpose of being a rock star? That you don't have to be in shape.
I don't know.
Oh no, you got to be in shape. You got to be skinny, man.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're Meatloaf.
I don't know if this is him or not, but someone did say stop in all caps. So I'm gonna say that.
Please tell me you like Meatloaf.
I love Meatloaf.
Everyone likes him.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Ryan, playing in one-on-one. I think in 9 to 11, I would win.
He has a good Meatloaf story. We'll tell you when we get off. Sweet. Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you guys for having me on. Thanks for listening.
Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. Thank you to Dylan Rockoff. Be sure to check him out this week in Wayne Sport. All the platforms we already mentioned.
And there will be a day when he's so big that we're like, remember when we had him on the show? Then he won't. All these we won't be Facebook friends anymore. We won't be this. We'll just have these channels we have to go through and then get rejected.
Y'all are friends for life.
Because he will be so big time.
Did someone do this to you? You have these very deep fears of people abandoning you.
It's not a fear. It's a prediction. It's like, hey, we had him on.
Thank you guys for watching. I'm Jeff. He's Mark. That's Dylan. We are the Midday Show. We will see you guys. Are we going to be here tomorrow? Memorial Day weekend's tricky.
No, don't we have somebody on tomorrow?
We were supposed to have Joe Smith.
Oh, but he had to push it. He had to push it to next week.
We're going to do a Top Gun review coming up soon with Joe Smith, who you probably had.
I never had him as a teacher, but he used to come to collective shows all the time.
So
and
he does North Central Cinema for us.
We have a lot of fun with Joe.
He's a good guy.
So he's going to do Top Gun review.
At first, he came in. The first day he came in, he was like, "I'm really not sure what I'm getting into," but he enjoys us now.
I think he knows where we come from.
He
gets the gimmick.
He gets it. Yeah, at first he's like, these guys are idiots. And now he just kind of plays along.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you soon.